Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Wing Complex here at the Silverstone International Circuit. From 2,500 competitors, we've whittled them down to just 20 to compete on rFactor 2 for one place on the finals of the McLaren's World Fastest Gamer. Silverstone National Circuit is where we've picked for the final race. It's going to be epic. Hello everyone, we've spent the last month whittling down some of the most incredible online races to establish just 20 for tonight's final, and they're going to go head to head with just one prize, which is a place on the finals of this World Fastest Gamer by McLaren, and that is a place of a week's interviews at the McLaren Technology Centre. It's one of the biggest prizes ever offered in e-gaming, a real recognition that esports is here and here to stay, and very, very important. And because it's the final, I've got a massive crowd of people here this evening to enjoy everything that's going on. Firstly, Scott Woodwis in the commentary position, as he has been for the last 3 weeks, and I'll be joining him a little bit later on. Race control is just over there. That is where Miguel and Ed are looking after everything. And if we pan a little bit further around, we have the production studio on the foreground and our VIP guests in the background. Give us a wave, everyone. Fantastic to have everybody here. Very quiet, aren't they? They're very well behaved. And we had, as I say, a whole month of competition. 3 weeks of racing, 5 go through each week, and here is how it panned out with Scott Woodwis.
Round 1 of the qualifiers took place on the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit with Rudy Van Buren on pole position, but Enzo Benito wouldn't go any further than turn 1 after contact on the formation lap put him out of the race straight away. As Van Buren led, there was lots of contact in the midfield. Fran Lopez went for a spin after he got tagged at Village in the loop, but he managed to fight back later on at Copse with a gutsy move up the inside, and he wasn't afraid to get his elbows out either. There was more battles and more spins further down. Just outside the top 5, Lee Morris went for a spin at Stowe Corner, but in the end it was all about Dutchman Rudy Van Buren. He went through the final corners to take a dominant win in round 1 as he flashed the headlights in celebration. It'll be second place for Nikodem Wisniewski, followed by Hani Al-Sabti, Graham Cowell and Atsi Kirchhoff in a very fast and furious opening qualifier. Round 2 saw the drivers head to Zandvoort in Holland with Dutchman Jeffrey Rietveld on pole, but he was challenged early on by Martin Stefanko into turn 1. Despite going side by side for several of the opening corners, Jeffrey Rietveld managed to win out with a very forceful move up into the hairpin at turn 4. Diogo Silva went for a spin in his pink McLaren halfway through the race and got himself beached into the gravel. Meanwhile, there was also battles between Kevin Van Duren and Jimmy Nussler, as once again the midfield was full of action and full of overtaking. Side by side up towards the final couple of corners, it looked as though that Nussler had to give up the place to Van Duren as he made a simple pass before the end of the lap. Also getting involved was frontrunner David Williams, who struggled in the early stages, and he had to fight his way up through the midfield to try and get himself up anywhere into contention. On the final lap of the race, it would be a big move for Jemric Bouteloup as he went up the inside of Peter Burlak into Tarzan, but that would only give him 6th place, not enough to qualify for the top 5. Meanwhile in front, it was an utterly dominant and slightly ominous victory for Jeffrey Rietveld, making it 2 Dutchmen winning 2 qualifiers. He would win from Martin Stefanko in 2nd place, with David Marocek, Michi Hoyer and Cem Bolok-Bashi joining him for round 2. Round 3 saw the drivers back at Silverstone on the international circuit. This was the big talking point. A massive accident into turn 1 involving several cars, with almost a third of the field getting caught up. As several drivers had to rush back to the pits or retire on the spot, it was judged that David Williams was at fault. He was given a drive-through penalty by the race stewards, but speeding in the pit lane and failing to serve the subsequent drive-through penalty saw him disqualified and out of the event. Jan van der Heijden was on the charge to overtake as he lined up Kirill Birikov up towards Stowe, and once again the midfield was full of overtaking and action, the place to be if you wanted to try and race somebody. Also a move up the inside from P.O. Peak didn't pull off on Daniel Brewer, as up into Vale the pair made contact and brought a hapless Paulo Moya into the mix as well. Peak and Moya continued, but Brewer was almost out on the spot. But in the lead, it was Kevin Ryan who would be the third winner from our qualifiers in rFactor 2 as he charged down to the final corner and held off the attentions of both Yuri Kastorp and Jaroslav Honzik. Ryan, Kastorp and Honzik made the top three, with Miguel Morelos and Davide Chiappini making up the top five. So those are the qualifiers from the rFactor races, and with the final five also coming up through from the time trials this week. It's all to play for tonight for that one spot in the McLaren qualifiers in November.
You've heard Scott Wibbis' voice, that is his face. And alongside me is Michael Rankshaw from McLaren Honda. And you can explain to me, Michael, a little bit about what the prize is for these guys. It's a huge prize.
Yes, so the prize is to come work with me in the simulator as a simulator test engineer for the year. We're helping to develop the car, both in terms of, on a Friday, but also, looking further ahead into, next year's car and as the rules develop.
Very, very exciting. Before we go into further details on that, I want to go through into the entry list for tonight then. There are the qualifiers, Scott. Some very interesting names.
Yes, indeed. So first, of course, we've got the guys that came through from the time trials. So Miguel Ballesta, GT Academy Spain champion. Top of the times this week, of course, Peter Burlak, Paulo Moya. Ivar Calame's a wildcard new man. Hasn't even really qualified for the past few weeks, but he is in tonight and actually looking pretty quick. Zbigniew Ciara, Eros Maskuli and Kirill Birikov in the mix as well. And then we have the qualifiers from the three heats.
Yes, just to point out then, the orange 7 guys are through on wildcard entries this evening. They didn't qualify through the 3 previous weeks. They are the other colours.
Yes, and then Rudy Van Buren, who was top of the group from the guys in week 1, because there's 2 drivers that couldn't make it tonight, which is Haniel Sabti and the other escapes from my memory, but so those 3 guys are coming through with Wisniewski and Graham Carroll. He's someone who came through from the Visa Vegas E-race once. Then we had Jeffrey Rietveld, who's someone who's been very quick in the likes of Formula Sim racing, also Martin Stefanko in there as well. David Morocek, Michi Hoyer, who's been quite prominent in the Virtual Endurance Championship, and Chembol Bashi, who's quite dominant on iRacing too. And then we have week 3 below, Kevin Ryan, the Irishman, very quick on Virtual Endurance Championship, Yuri Kastorp, Jaroslav Honzik, Miguel Morelos and Davide Chiappini, and those are our 20 qualifiers for tonight, and those go with the 20 cars that will charge towards Copse Corner for the first time, with it all to play for tonight.
And what I absolutely love is there's 12 different nations represented. We have 12 different nations coming together virtually online and racing. So we don't see them around us here like we've seen in other publicised races. They are at home, logging on virtually, and then we get to race anybody. Last week we had a guy from Brazil who obviously missed lunch. Actually never did race, but fantastic to see. And that international element for McLaren, very, very important, because it means that you can pick from a pool of anybody.
Yes, it's nice to have a broad range. I mean, we already work with a range of sort of international drivers, and we always want the best in the world wherever they come from.
So tell us a little bit about the simulator at McLaren. What do you use it for, and how many days is it running?
So we typically run 3, maybe 4 days a week if it's a race week. We do anything from short-term development, so we're looking, on a Friday of a race weekend, we're trying to help the guys at track through to long-term development, so plotting ahead development routes for next year's car. And
you have a team of drivers to do that for the moment?
Yes, we currently have a team of 4 drivers. Our main simulator driver is Oliver Turvey. We also work with Nick de Vries, Nobuharu Matusitsa, who's also driving in Formula 2 along with Nick, and of course Lando Norris.
And very, very important then a role for the team. Not only the skill of driving, but feedback is going to be very important for you guys.
Yes, I mean, we can obviously do a lot offline, but the advantage of the simulator is getting that driver's feedback, getting what he feels is either a positive step or a negative step, and that might then drive us into a bit more research in terms of the data or down a different development route.
Also, I think the question people want to know is how often do Fernando and Stoffel use the simulator themselves? Do they use it for training for the circuits? Is it primarily the test drivers that get to run the laps?
So primarily we work with the simulator drivers just because, being the calendar so busy, the race drivers aren't really in the UK, as much as we like for 3 to 4 days running a week. But both of them do come in regularly. Both of them use it to do setup and development work, both for this year, but also we'll start to get their read on next year's car.
Good stuff. Excellent.
Well, very, very exciting for one of our gamers to join that fleet. Not necessarily from this rFactor 2 competition, because there are different platforms and different qualifiers, and we've had some drivers that have been pre-selected. So you'll be part of the interview process, I'm sure, when it comes to November, and the winner of this event this evening goes into that group of finalists and a whole week of intense interviews at a very, very scary place, the McLaren Technology Centre. Maybe not necessarily for you, but surely your first day at work you went, oh wow.
Yeah, well, even further than that, my first interview day, I think when I got home I talked as much about the building and the place as I did about the interview. It really does stand out compared to a lot of other places you go around the world.
Absolutely. Well, you've seen our entry list and the qualifiers, but there was still a time trial event this week to get those five wildcard entries. Here's this wonderful overlay that we've been showing you throughout our competition. 20 cars, all going around the Silverstone National Circuit, absolutely layered together, and something that you're very used to seeing, Scott, as somebody on e-gaming, but for a motorsport fan it's kind of confusing and weird.
I think we sort of wish we had this in proper motorsport to compare lap times if we could, but the great thing is here you get the comparison in lines and also in braking points, turning points. So one driver may have an advantage in one corner, for example in here into Brooklands, but then they get to the next corner at Luffield and that line they took may have compromised them for the next turn. So it's fascinating how one driver seems to kind of rule each corner as they go through to try and hook up the lap. But it doesn't mean that if you're good at one corner, you know, if you're not good at one corner, all the others have to count for something. So these guys here showing exactly how close it was and also how similar the lines were in terms of how it was. So it wasn't too much of a difference.
Silverstone National Circuit, 3.5 corners, 30-lap race. Before that, we've had qualifying already, but we've got Superpole to establish the top 5. That's very, very important.
It is, yeah, because effectively that means obviously it calculates the starting grid for the top 5, and of course everyone wants to be on pole position. Of course, who doesn't, of course, for this sort of race, particularly if you're going to go into Copse Corner with 19 Hungary sim races behind you. And trust me, I don't think you want to be caught in the pack, because if something kicks off like it did at the start of round 3, you could be in trouble.
Right, Superpole's going to be super, super fast because it's only a 50-second lap. Scott, head over there and I'll join you in just a few seconds. And you can join us here online virtually. We're streaming across YouTube, Facebook, Twitch and all the other different platforms, and there's comment sections in each one of those, and of course Twitter, the WF Gamer. You can talk to us there and we'll collate all of your comments and chat to you at the end, and please be interactive. This is what it's all about, your love for esports, your love for motorsports, and seeing how absolutely awesome this event is. The rFactor 2 qualifying finals is happening, and first up it's Superpole.
So, as we head into the Superpole contest here for the final time in the world's fastest gamer, these are your top 5 that are going to be heading out onto circuit very, very shortly. They are in reverse order. Eros Maskuli, who was 5th quickest, then it'll be Jaroslav Honzik, then we will have Nikodem Wisniewski, Rudy Van Buren, and then Jeffrey Rietver will be out, the 5th and final driver. But first of all, we have Eros Maskuli heading down pit lane towards the start of his qualifying lap, and this is all going to be pretty crucial. He heads down towards the end of pit lane, waiting for the green light to be able to head out, and he'll have a completely clear circuit on what's been a very rubbered-in track through practice and qualifying, Ben. And of course, the more grip there's there, the quicker the chance he has of a very good lap time. Of course, it's all to play for in this one-shot qualifying.
Eros from Italy was the first of our reserve drivers. So we learnt that Hani Al-Sabti and Atsi Kirchhoff from the first week wouldn't actually make it through this week because Atsi, for instance, is engineering a Formula 4 car, so he's not able to actually compete in this race. Therefore, that allowed Eros to come in. He was 6th fastest in our wildcard time trials today, and now he's in the top 5 qualifiers.
Yep, and effectively the biggest surprises can come from the unlikeliest of sources, I suppose. Eros Maskuli, who was part of the top 20 last week but got caught up in some of the incidents and had to retire early on, gets a shot at redemption in possibly the biggest race of them all, which is the final. So he's now winding up to start his qualifying lap. Notice that all these drivers, they'll take a wider entry into the final corner at Luffield and then basically go for a straighter exit through Luffield on the exit through Woodcote to get the most amount of speed towards the line as Maskuli fires it across the pit straight, taking the board markers along with him down down towards turn 1 for the first time. Superpole is on.
Very, very important to get as much temperature into your car, especially over that first bump into Copse. Make sure the car sticks, the brakes and the tyres as well. And now head your way to the second corner of the lap. Braking zone is turning left, but then it's right through Beckett's. And then try and get on the power as early as possible. There is a little bump as you come onto the Grand Prix circuit again. And now head down the Wellington straight, by which point hopefully everything's up to temperature. Brake as late as possible as you come into Brooklands. Perhaps get the car turning in as you're braking. Try and hook up the apex, which he does not. He's a little bit late, a little bit wide, a little bit allergic to that apex this afternoon. And now through the final turn at Luffield. Hug the inside line. When you feel brave enough, get on the power and shoot towards the start and finishing line.
Yeah, we've had a bit of an oversteer moment through the middle of Brooklands, which didn't really help him. He heads up towards the line and puts in a time of 52.713. Not the quickest we've seen so far here this weekend. It's about 5 or 6 tenths off the quickest time we saw on the time trials. But now we head, of course, to our next driver. Again, another surprise that we didn't expect to see in the top 5, and that is Jaroslav Honzik. Now, Honzik, of course, hails from the Czech Republic, comes from Prague, and he actually landed in, let's have a look, he was 17th in the first race, then 3rd. He managed to get through in the final qualifier last week. Nice tidy line through Copse, a little bit wide on the exit, but using enough curb so that he doesn't get too much of a penalty. Now towards a very tricky corner, up through Maggots, the very kink, then through Beckett's, the long right-hander, taking a slightly later apex, then quick on the power, trying to avoid the bump. And then as he turns his way onto the back straight towards Brooklands, the key corner, I think, on this circuit, because you can take multiple lines, but if you screw up the exit here, it could really harm the lap.
As you said, different approach to Maggots and Beckett's, trying to make it as wide as possible. And again, an oversteer moment through the middle of the corner at Brooklands. The car was definitely trying to get away from him. In fact, he had to take quite a lot of curb on the inside just to correct the car. Now all 4 wheels off the circuit there. Automatic penalties recognised by the game if you do track limit infringements. He comes to break the beam at the end of the lap. Will it be better? Yes, it is. A 52.4.
Absolutely. So that is now 2 qualifiers down, 3 to go. Now we get to the guys we expected to be in the top 3. First of which, Nikodem Wisniewski. He qualified all the way back at week 1, finishing 2nd to the man that will go out next, which is Rudy Van Buren. But Wisniewski, the man from Poland, is heading up through Copse corner. Bit of a swing, and look at this bit of a twitch of oversteer. A little wide on the exit of Copse corner. It was starting to twitch. The outside rear wheel was starting to spin up a little bit too much. A bit of a slide holding through Copse corner. Under brakes for Maggots and Beckett's. And again, keeping it nice and tidy. But I think possibly he could have lost a couple of crucial tenths in that first corner of Copse, Ben.
Absolutely, the car did not look good. Had to take 2 stabs at it on the exit of the corner. Breaks the beam for the first sector, which is incredibly short. And now to the second sector. He is better in the first sector despite that moment, and looks good and clean through Luffield. Hold that apex. He's going for the double apex approach, letting the car run in the middle of the corner before bringing it back into the quite a late apex. And now Woodcote isn't really a corner. It's flat out towards the start line, which is very early on. And where does he go? Fastest. Fractionally, 1/100th of a second ahead of Jaroslav Honzik.
52.390 is the one to beat. Now this is the man that won round 1 back at Silverstone on the Grand Prix circuit. Rudy Van Buren. He's somebody who's a front runner in GPPWC. He's representing his team, Vodpool Motorsport, tonight. Once again, resplendent in the red and white livery. Just taking that wider run to get the straighter exit off of Luffield. And now this is pretty crucial, of course. I predicted it was going to be possibly Van Buren versus Rietveld, the 2 Dutch drivers gunning for national pride as they head up onto the pit straight. This is Van Buren's one shot to get himself onto pole position. Up towards Copse corner, hugging the racing line best he can. Little twitch of curb on the inside, using all the exit as well. That's allowed. He's not too far across the curb there. And now up towards the complex of Maggots and Beckett's, who will be breaking a straight line and just hug the apex all the way through. Late apex, who Beckett's lets the car run wide. It's nice and calm, nice and steady over the bump, like it's not even there. Looking pretty good on the first sector. This is a pretty hooked up lap by almost 3/10. He's up so far on Wisniewski's time.
Yeah, the split was really good. It was interesting. He was very cautious on the throttle on the exit of Copse. Didn't get full throttle down, but very neat and tidy through Brooklands and now into Luffield. And sometimes the less drama, the less movement in the car actually means it's travelling faster around the circuit. Lets the car run out at Luffield. It's slightly downhill and off camber on the exit there, so the car's kind of encouraged to fall into that curve. Comes to the beam then. Is it pole position? Yes, it is. A 52.288, a whole 1/10 of a second faster than Wisniewski. But what will his fellow countryman do? Jeffrey Reitveld in the orange machine, far different livery to Rudy Van Buren, which is good when they line up at the front and we can work out who's who. Super wide through Luffield as he prepares, tries to get the slingshot back, late apex, straight in the corner as much as possible, and now he heads towards the line to start this crucial lap.
This potentially could be one of the most nerve-wracking but crucial laps he's ever set in sim racing, up towards Copse Corner. A little bit later through the apex here, lovely run through Copse Corner, lets it run by just about enough, I think that's allowed. And now up through Magnus and Beckett's again. He'll have to break in a straight line to hold this one key as he ups up towards the complex. Shifts down a couple of gears, and again, a bit of a slide through the middle of Beckett's. He's trying to get the car turned in, lets the car drift wide on the exit again. I think he may have lost a little bit of time. In fact, his first sector time is, looking at it, it's a little bit down, I think, on what Van Buren managed, up towards the crucial breakers over Brooklands. Trying to run into the corner, late apex on the exit as well, then holds it up on the almost the middle of the corner into Luffield. This could be pretty crucial. The question now remains, is it good enough for pole, or will he have to start on the front row, Ben?
Held the car in the middle of the corner between Brooklands and Luffield, didn't let the car run as wide as he perhaps could have done, and maybe that's cost him time. He holds to the inside line as he crosses the beam, and it is pole position by 0.30. Reitveld ahead of Van Buren, then a whole tenth back to Wisniewski. Honzik in fourth and Iris Masculini in fifth position, and there's plenty more behind them as well, because there's 15 more hungry competitors, including some very, very, very fast guys.
Absolutely. So confirmation, interestingly enough, the top five actually finished in exactly the same order they qualified in their preliminaries. So to confirm the top five, Jeffrey Reitveld takes pole by 0.03 of a second from Van Buren, with Wisniewski, Honzik and Masculi the top five. It's going to be very interesting into Copse, but that's your top five for the final of the rFactor 2 qualifiers for McLaren's world's fastest gamer.
I told you it was going to be very, very pacey. Qualifying around the Silverstone National Circuit is very, very pacey. Indeed, more guests to feast your eyes upon. Devlin De Francisco, fantastic to have you with us. Carlin driver in Formula 4 last year, European Open this year in effectively Formula 3 cars. Yeah. You also love your sim racing.
Yeah, I think sims are definitely a very important thing that's often quite overlooked. I think it's a very, very, very important tool that a lot of drivers don't maybe get the most out of. I think it's very helpful to prepare for race weekends, and it's also quite enjoyable as well.
So do you find yourself on online games every so often?
Yeah, I always love to iRace against a lot of the other drivers as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I can spend quite late nights on iRacing quite often. It's very enjoyable.
So hang on, you race each other on track, probably for years, because you've known and grown up with the same group of people, yeah. And then you go on your weekends off and your days off, you go and race online now?
Yeah. Yes.
Wow. It's a new world, isn't it? Presumably, were you also a keen driver yourself when you were younger, or were you always engineering?
I think, you know, every engineer is, or certainly every engineer F1 is a frustrated racing driver.
Yes.
Yeah, I think I quickly realised that the driving wasn't going to be for me, and, you know, happened to be that I was quite good at the engineering.
When you look at this kind of setup and this rFactor 2 competition, after Superpole there and 3, 4, 5 very, very clean laps, are you impressed with the kind of level that these guys are showing?
Yeah, I think it's very impressive. Like the gap between them, you know, considering that they've all, you know, put a lot of effort in, you know, to be that close, you know, it is quite impressive, and it certainly, you know, bodes well for, you know, what should be a quite exciting race.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Now, I'm sure in the real world you've done a huge amount of laps around the Silverstone National Circuit.
Yes, and obviously over here on the World's Fastest Gamer, it looks just the same as it does in the real. You know, it's very, very close between the top 5, top 10, and top 20. I think it's going to be very close. It's going to be the smallest of margins. I think it's going to be about who makes the least amount of mistakes, but the laps on the onboard, they look very, very clean.
And is there a potential to make mistakes around the circuit? Obviously, there's not walls, there's not grass like you see at Zandvoort. There is opportunity to get away with things, but there's also little technical things around the circuit that you see on the game and you see in real life, aren't there?
Yeah, no, of course, and they're actually very, very similar. And that's why I think the sim is such a very good tool. I mean, you look, getting an exit back on the back straight is going to be very important. Make sure that full throttle point is early. It's just very, very little
little key tactical points that are going to make the difference.
And as you come out of Brooklands, you've got that little bump, haven't you, which is really frustrating.
Yeah, no, it's very accurate on the sim actually.
Yeah.
Very clear to the real life. That can slightly upset the car and cost you 100th, what could be the difference between pole or fifth.
Yeah. Well, it's wonderful to have you here. It's great to have a real-life racing driver adding some sim experience as well. And we have our own pet driver as well. We've got our race steward, Miguel, who has raced in Nissans in the real world, and he's raced in plenty of academy races online as well. And Miguel jumped aboard our simulator here and gave us a lap, a guided tour around the Silverstone National Circuit.
Okay, we are about to do a lap at Silverstone National Circuit. First corner will be Cobb's Corner. Fourth gear corner, very fast. Be very careful not to exceed track limits on the exit. And then into Maggots here. Slowest corner on this circuit, second gear. Very important to have a nice exit on this corner, because on the next straight, it's the place that most of the overtaking will occur. Then a hard no brakes here into Brooklands, second gear corner. And then into the last corner here, also second gear. Very important again to have a nice exit out of Luffield, because the next corner we have is Woodcote, and in the dry it's flat. And that's how you do a lap on Silverstone National Circuit.
I promise you, Miguel doesn't look like that in real life. He does actually take those goggles off as well. We'll meet him later for a bit of post-race analysis when we dissect everything and talk to you and get all your feedback as well about this incredible, incredible competition. I want to talk about overtaking, Dev. It's wide circuit. There are big braking zones, but actually it's not that easy to overtake here, is it?
No, of course not, because it is a very short lap and it's quite easy to defend around there. So I think it's going to be mainly about, when you're racing your way through, it's going to be about putting pressure on the guy in front to make a mistake, and I think that's going to give you your opportunity to get past.
And in terms of the simulation that these rFactor 2 models, it's quite amazing that everything from the tyre temperatures, brake temperatures, damage as well, can be simulated, and that will make a big impact on the shape of the race.
Yeah, I think it's, all these factors add up. It's short laps. There's going to be a lot of them over the course of the race, and so those that can sort of manage the temperatures, can find a consistent pace, are really going to succeed.
So it is Dutchman versus Dutchman. Max Verstappen having yet another disappointing weekend in Formula One, but there's plenty of Dutch spirit in the e-gaming world, and especially in rFactor in these finals. It's a 1-2 with Jeffrey Rookveld and Rudy van Buren, and we can have a look now at that fast lap again, the Superpole lap that put him on the pole position. So coming out of the final turn and heading towards the start-finishing line. Dev, what do you see when you're seeing the kind of steering inputs going in and the gear changes going in on this lap? It just looks so well done.
No, it looks like a very clean lap. It looks like he carried a lot of speed through there as well. No, it looks like a very, very clean lap. I think it's going to be a really, really exciting race later.
Very important to try and stay as far left. Well, big old slide in the middle of the corner there, carried way too much speed in, but obviously got away with it.
Yeah, no, he carried quite a lot of speed there, but obviously the minimum speed must have been very high, so it must have paid off.
And you sometimes sliding, Michael, is right, isn't it? You can get away with it and actually carry enough speed through the corner and maybe use it as a braking rather than anything else. Yeah,
little bits and pieces here and there on a pole lap you can get away with just being on that limit. Yeah. It's obviously in a race stint is when you've got to just sort of temper yourself a little bit, because the last thing you want to do is push your tyres too far.
Yeah. And of course, we've only learnt about 5 of our competitors. We've got 15 other drivers, all of which have qualified into this race, whether it be through the wildcard time trials this last week or through the races the previous week. So every single one of these drivers are super, super high quality competitors. And that is why this is going to be an absolutely fascinating battle. In terms of sim racing, okay, you don't have that danger element, so are you a bit more gung-ho about overtaking and things like that, or we see being very, very well looked after?
Possibly, but I think I think the drivers are a very high standard here. So I think, and the pressure element I think is still very much there in the sim racing. I mean, it's a very big prize on the line. So I think it'll be similar.
And tell me from your perspective. Obviously, you're already going through those different ladders, the different levels to progress, hopefully into Formula One. I'm guessing. To have the opportunity to work with a team like McLaren as a driver in their simulator, even for you, who's not in the sim world but in the real world, that's a huge prize, right?
No, of course. I think as a real driver, that would be a great experience, and a lot of things you'd be able to take from that into your real racing, and it'll improve massively.
And you know people like Lando, who's obviously already working for Honda.
No, of course, he's very good, yeah.
And actually, we probably should say hello, because I know that Lando's watched the last 3 weeks, so can almost guarantee that Lando's watching this week as well. Shame you're not sitting here, Lando. I mean, come on, you really should be here. But he tried to qualify through the first week and didn't manage to get through. A bit awkward. You need to give him a bit more training.
Yeah, I'll bring that with him the next time I see him.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we are getting to a point where we can get the race underway. A 30-lap encounter when we have 30 laps of racing, which is going to be 40-odd laps of around that circuit. It's so short.
Yeah, I mean, if they're doing sub 1 minute lap times, yeah, it's going to add up.
It's going to be very, very dizzy, I think. We have 20 of the best rFactor 2 gamers, and every single one of them, whether they are 20th on the grid or on pole position, are desperate to take the victory, to take that one step towards the interview stage at the McLaren Technology Centre, which comes up in November. And there are different platforms as well. So iRacing, for instance, that begins on the 12th of September, and you can start qualifying for that competition, that platform. And we will also meet somebody who's just gone through all those different stages on his mobile device, and he is now part of the world's fastest gamer competition and the interview stage in McLaren in November as well. It's an amazing competition, putting all these different platforms in the same place, and for you guys to then decide who you'd like as your simulator driver in 2018. I think it's time. Let's go racing. Great. Scott, hit it.
So, this is it. This is where the talking stops and the flag drops. This is where it all matters. Let's look at the run of who exactly is where on the grid to confirm it. So the front row is going to be an all-Dutch affair. Jeffrey Rietveld on pole position, on your driver's right down the back straight, with alongside him to his right, but onto your left on the screen, is going to be Rudy Van Buren. Then Nikodem Wisniewski and Jaroslav Honzik lined up on the second row. Eros Maskuli and David Mrocek better the rest in row 3. Yuri Dekasdorp and Miguel Moreles on row 8 for 4, and then rounding up the top 10, Graham Carroll and Miguel Ballesta. Then Paolo Moya and Peter Burlak ahead of Ivan Kalames. He's one of the major wildcards to watch for in 13th. Davide Chiappini alongside him as well. Then Michi Hoyer and Martin Stefanko on row 8. Row 9 is Chempel Bachi and Kirill Birakov. And rounding out the grid, last but certainly not least, Zbigniew Ciara and Kevin Ryan. 20 rFactor races, 30 minutes around the national circuit. Is this going to be karma, chaos, or simply absolute heaven? How's this going to work out, Ben?
Biggest shock has got to be Kevin Ryan down there in 20th and last position. He was the winner last week around the Silverstone International Circuit, so that's the other bit that we're not using today. He's got a lot of work to do, but anything can happen, and Kops being almost flat out around that first corner, like we saw when we were in the International Circuit, it's going to be very, very tricky. And it looks as though perhaps the grid was not set up correctly, and we're going to have to go again.
Yeah, by the looks of things. So we have to do that grid run through again, I think, for a second time once we get it correct. But we only read through what we had on the screen, effectively. So we're going to wait and see how this one plays out as the race gets set up once again. But there's a couple of drivers in that top 6 who are a little bit higher or lower than they should have been. I think actually Miguel Ballesta, I think, should be P6. I think he was better than the rest from what I saw in the qualifying session. But let's talk about Miguel for a second, because of course he's quite a roller coaster in this competition. Of course, he was disqualified, I think, for a pure miscommunication in race 1, didn't do race 2, struggled in race 3, and yet he managed to get through effectively by being fastest in the time trial qualifiers as one of basically the top wild card for this one. So effectively, he's in a position where, particularly if it works out for him, this could be an absolute fairy tale for him if he wins.
Well, Miguel Ballester, he was the fastest man through this particular time trial session, which allowed him to qualify into the race. And as you say, he's been with us throughout the whole time. So in the second week, he finished 9th. That was his best position, but wasn't really in the top 5 to get through. But the first week, where he got disqualified, he was on row 2. He went through into the Superpole. He didn't understand what the race director was telling him because of his grasp of English. He's Spanish. And therefore, he made a series of mistakes, which meant that he was disqualified. And it's great to have him back. I've kind of taken him to my heart because he's had such a roller coaster, as you say. And for him now to be up there, just missing out on the top 5, but the fastest man in the time trial gives him a real opportunity to show something here. And if he does, as you say, take victory, I can't imagine what that team speak interview is going to be like.
I imagine you're probably going to start weeping for him rather than if he's going to start weeping. I think if you take him to your heart a little bit.
Style. I cannot talk.
I'm going to have to stop because there's a lump in my throat.
I knew you'd be able to say it word for word.
That's Suzuka 96. How much of a nerd am I? Anyway, another drivers we should see that are quite down the order, which are lower than we expected. I mean, guys who are up there in the top 5 in some of the races, in particular, I think guys like Martin Stefanko, Michi Hoyer was a little bit down there as well, and also Ivar Kalames. I want to see what he can do as well, because Ivar was in the mix as well. He's a very fast rFactor racer. He's raced in Formula Sim racing against the likes of, and even beaten the likes of a certain Bono Weiss. So he is a very talented sim racer, probably more akin to like Grand Prix single-seater style racing than GTs, but even so, he's proved himself to get up there into the qualifiers, and because of that, he's been on a fantastic journey. I think so far it could be working out for him pretty well if the luck works against him and if the race comes to him throughout the whole 30 minutes as well.
So we're just making sure that the grid is set properly. I think there was a couple of little errors in the first grid and the cars were not in the correct position. Hey, that is something that happens in real life. That's not just down to sim racing. You can always have cars out of position and aborted starts, and that is what we're having now. We're just placing the cars in the correct order. And actually, Kevin Ryan isn't starting at the back of the grid. I think that was one of the errors that was part of it, because Kevin Ryan actually is qualified in 8th position. So let's do the grid rundown again before they start going out on track and mixing it up again.
Yes, right. So the correct grid this time should be, as we run it through, top 5 was as it should be. So Jeffrey Rietveld and Rudy Van Buren will start on the front row of the grid, and all Dutch affair. The run down to Copse Corner is going to be that much more intriguing with those two around. Then we have Nikodem Wisniewski and Jaroslav Honzik on row 2. Then we have Iris Masculia in row 5, and then the correct grid, thankfully, which is Miguel Ballester, as we said, starting on the 3rd row of the grid in P6. Then we have Miguel Moreles and Kevin Ryan, who was our round 3 winner, up in 8th place on the grid. Then Graham Carroll, who's a former Visa Vegas E-Racer finalist, and he was a heat winner for this multiple times as well, in 9th. And Chembul Bashi in P10 to round up the top 10. Ivar Kalames is one of our top wild cards to watch out for in 11th. Then Yuri Kasdorp, who was in the mix. I think he was P2 in the final in round 3 last time out. Then we had Kirill Birukov and Michi Hoyer start on row 7. Row 8 is Paolo Moya and Zbigniew Ciara. Then Martin Stefanko and a man who again has been cropping up every now and again in all the rounds so far, Peter Burlak, down in 18th. So he's got a lot of work to do to try and make his way out through the field, with David Morocek and Davide Chiappini rounding out our 20-car grid. Now that should be the correct grid this time. Yep. So hopefully this time around, once they come to the green flag, the final is going to be on, and it's 30 minutes to decide who gets this. It's 20 drivers, 30 minutes, first past the post wins, winner takes all.
And it's amazing, isn't it? The Burlak was one of the guys that we were championing on the first week. Yep, he's going to get through. He'll be in the top 5, and he's still going at it. He's been with us every single week. He was P2 in the time trials over the last week on this particular circuit, and his results before that were a 9th, a 7th and a 14th. So at least he's finished all the races, although I think he was involved in a couple of accidents on the Silverstone International Circuit last time out. Ballester, Burlak, Moya, Ciara and Masculini and Burkov are drivers that we've seen before. We do have one driver in the field who has not qualified through the top 20 any week at all, and he was 4th fastest in the time trials last week. But that's not a surprise to you, Scott.
No, Ivar Kalames, as we said, he's one of those guys who, I know if you give him a good car and a good setup, he is lightning quick. So watch him from the back from somewhere 10th or 11th place. I don't expect him in the race to stay there, but as the cars now forming up side by side, it will be Rietveld versus Van Buren with the run down towards turn 1. The whole shot's going to be crucial because, Ben, we're about to get this final underway. 30 minutes, it's about to kick off.
Rolling start then, making sure the cars have got their temperatures up, their brakes, the tyres, And now the drivers at the front of the field take over the pace. Nice and slow. Van Buren is a bit far back to right Veld. He's hanging back a little bit. He should be side by side. Would put them on the inside. Green, 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 says race control. The cars splay out and head towards the first turn. And who's got the inside line? Van Buren is going to go down the inside of right Veld. They're side by side as they go through the corner, and behind them side by side for third position. And it looks like a bit of contact mid-pack, but everyone's still facing in the right direction and still at the front, side by side as they now come into Beckett's. And it's right Veld who's taken it, ahead of Van Buren in second position and third of Wisniewski.
Yep, top five pretty much just stayed as they were. Good start, it seems, though, from Kevin Ryan. Balester's down to 7th place, and Graham Carroll's up to 8th as they charge up towards Brooklands. This is the key corner now, so you've got Kevin Ryan looking to try and defend from Miguel Balester up into the right left-hander. They're going 2x2. Hurrah in the mix as well, and also in there, too, I can see, is, in fact, looks at Chembul Bashi in 9th place, ahead of Michi Hoyer in P10. Ivar Calamese has stayed in 11th, ahead of Morelos, and they're going 2x2 on the exit as well. And miraculously, I think it looks as though, Ben, every single car's got through lap 1 completely unscathed, and that, I have to say, is a miracle.
What hasn't been unscathed is the bollards. In a classic Silverstone, all the bollards get put up, and by lap 1, all the bollards go down.
Side-by-side action behind the top 5. That was Graham Carroll passing Kevin Ryan. That's a crucial pass to get himself up to 7th place. So they're all closing up in the top 4 because Wisniewski now for 3rd place is charging after both Van Buren and Rietveld, with also in the mix Jaroslav Honzik. He's been pretty quiet in these mixes as well, but he's really up there in P4 to give them something. As now the two Dutchmen go side-by-side. It's now Van Buren on the outside, Rietveld on the inside, and the brakes for Brooklands. And if Van Buren's not too careful, he may leave the door open for Wisniewski on the exit of Brooklands. Shuts the door firmly, and the top 4 as they were, but it looks as though that both Van Buren and Wisniewski are looking pretty racy in these early stages.
You've got to be so creative about your overtaking into Brooklands, because the circuit goes left and then it goes right. So if you're inside for one, then you're the outside for the next, and it's really, really hard to find a way through. Also in the braking zone at Maggots and Beckett's, with that little kink of Maggots, makes Beckett's a really hard overtaking opportunity as well. And Cops is fast, not a big braking zone there, so it's really hard there too. What I love seeing here is the cars are nailed together. It's really, really working. There was a little update to the car over the last week, and it's really working because the slipstream is now really coming into play. Before, there was too much dirty air coming off that rear wing, and there was forcing the cars apart. Now they're glued together.
Yeah, just in a move between Kevin Ryan and Graham Carroll. The pair did come together ever so slightly, bit of a forceful move from Ryan up and towards it, as well as behind. I can see for 11th place, I can see Ivar Calamese up the inside of Michi Hoyer over to Brooklands. There's contact. Calamese is sideways. He gets tagged by, I think that was possibly Rochik or Stefanko. One of the two. It was Morelos, in fact, that tagged in. That puts Calamese round the right way. Thankfully, he's got away with that pretty much almost unscathed, but there is going to be damage to Morelos' dark red car as they charge up towards Cops again. This is now on lap 5 into the right-hander at Cops. It's still Rietveld from Van Buren, from Wisniewski, then from Honzik, and then Mascuni falling back into 5th. But Miguel Balester is in the mix as well in P6 and charging after Honzik as they head into Maggots and Beckett's for the 5th time.
We had contact also between Kirill Burkov and Zbigniew Ziara, and they have both DNF'd out of the race.
Drive-through for Calamese.
So we're just getting a drive-through for Calamese by the looks of things. Calamese at that point in time looks for the contact, and that was a bit of an ambitious move up the inside of Michi Hoyer, so that's the reason why he's now falling back down the order as we continue to look at the leaders. And I have to say, this is the race that we were hoping for. Of course, we're hoping that we wouldn't get one driver that would just run away with it at all and just sprint off into the distance. We've got a proper race on our hands here between the likes of Rietveld and Van Buren. This is now for national pride, as well as actually winning the entire competition here of the rFactor 2 qualifiers, as they turn their way into the right-hander through Cops corner, now on lap 6. We've still got, looking at the timer, we have got, let's see, where's the time on my screen at the moment?
Battle side by side further back. Masculini holding on just about, but he went very, very wide to defend from Balester, who's behind, and Balester has attention as well. There are 4 cars locked together. Kevin Ryan making his way up through the pack. It's Ryan to the inside then of Balester going into Brooklands, and he makes that stick. Lovely move. And Graham Carroll watching on as well. I think Graham's actually lost a position perhaps there, but in contact then, bit of loading as you'd say in karting as they go into Luffield, and puts Balester sideways a little bit, but then he's able to keep the car facing the right direction. The car grips up again and off he goes. We're looking at Balesta and Graham Carroll, and behind him Cembulik Bashi at 7th, 8th and 9th spots.
We've also lost, I'm afraid, our first retirement. Kirill Birakov is out of this race with suspension damage. Meanwhile, at the front, his action status, because the two Dutchmen are going at it again in towards Magnussen, Beckett and Van Buren, is really applying the pressure up through the right-hander as it starts to open out onto the Wellington back straight underneath the bridge now towards Brooklands. And look at Wisniewski in the black, gold and white car in 3rd place, the Polish driver with his compatriot Honzik for company as well in 4th place. They head back down into Brooklands again. Wisniewski takes a slightly tighter line into the left hand, and Calames is out of the race as well. Calames with suspension problems, it's clocked up on our screen. He was down in 18th, so he's out of the race with damage and severe problems, so his race is done and dusted. His contest is over, but now as they head out of Woodcote through the field and onto the pit straight again to start lap 8. I think we lost Graham Carroll with engine problems, so they're dropping like flies right now. So Birakov, Calames and Carroll are out of the race. Carroll's one of the main drivers to watch out for, as we see Van Buren going a little bit wide through the exit of Kopp's Corner. That could give Wisniewski a real opportunity, but so far we've only had, 8 laps, and it's action all over the place.
Breathless, absolutely breathless, as you expect at the Silverstone National Circuit. Just behind again there's a battle going on between Balesta and Kevin Ryan, with Masculini kind of just about holding on. Masculini must now be in 5th position, yes, so ahead of him Kevin Hosnick is kind of on his own. And then ahead of them, those front 3 still could be anyone's between those front 3. At the moment, they've been very, very well behaved. There's been no contact between them, and there's not even been any attempts at passing. But as you say, the race is long, and you don't want to start making enemies at this point when you've got such a long battle going on. But it's nice to see Kevin Ryan making his way up through the field and trying to get onto the back of our leading group.
Van Buren's getting a little bit impatient now in 2nd place. He really wants to try and make a move, and I have to say these top 3 are setting the pace right now in this race as they charge back up towards Magnussen Beckett on lap 9 of this final here. The rFactor 2 final, filling McLaren's world's fastest gamer to decide who goes to that final interview stage as the mix as well. Cembulik Bashi's out of the race now with engine problems, so they're again the 4th driver out of this race in the space of some 8-9 laps. They really are pushing it to the limit. Wisniewski darts out, puts himself into Van Buren's mirrors for 2nd place as they head back into Brooklands again. But Rietveld so far is controlling the pace, and you have to say, Ben, also absorbing all this pressure, all this constant barrage of attacks from the likes of Van Buren and Wisniewski incredibly well at this point in time. Question is, can he sustain that for the remainder of this 20-minute race left that's going on?
Now, engine problems isn't a luck thing. The computer system doesn't just work out, all right, we're going to give you have an engine problem today. That will be down to the shifts and maybe missing a shift, maybe trying to sit on the limiter too long, and that's when the engine pops. So we've seen 2 drivers suffer from that. It's very easy to do. A lot of them do it going into Copse. They leave it in a gear, hit the limiter, and then they can be almost flat through Copse. If you change up, then you have to change back down, and it's not quite as fast, but you do have a risk of damaging your car. Let's jump on board with our 2nd place driver, Rudy Van Buren, as we head down into Brooklands and see just how big Jeffrey Wright-Belt's McLaren 650S GT3 car is through this section. Outside, the circuit looks very wide. It looks easy to overtake, but once you drive on the heads-up view, you can see just how difficult it is to find a way past, especially when Wright-Belt has made no errors as yet.
I have to say, I'm not good cause very professional so far, because they're that close that just any moment in time someone's going to pull the pin and decide, right, now's the time to attack. And they may decide they'll leave it until the last 5 laps, which means we could have a real barnstorming finish to this world's fastest game at rFactor 2 final. Still the top 3 as it was. Rietveld, Van Buren and Wisniewski, line astern. They're almost so that close, you can almost throw a blanket over them. It's like a 12-wheeled 650S GT3, they're that close. They'll stay in the slipstream. I think there's been a change behind, because Balesta and Ryan are still going at it over P6 behind. So it's become down Brooklands again. They're always touching doors, as it's now Balesta on the outside, Ryan on the inside. Who's going to get the run in under brakes? Balesta trying to sweep on the outside. There's more contact between them, but the Irishman gets past the Spaniard into the left-hander at Brooklands and covers the line nicely into the right-hander at Loughman to try and get the exit off the corner. Slightly sharper and tighter exit from the line taken by Balesta. He'll stay in the slipstream through Woodcote and up towards Copse. but nothing doing just yet as the front three are covered purely by just half a second. It really is that close.
Yeah, there's one car length between each of them in the front three. There is a bit of a gap now to Honznik. He has dropped back, so I don't think, unless something happens to these front three, he's in the position to really challenge as yet. What's interesting to see is that Eros Masculini is actually finding pace and starting to pull onto the back of Honznik. Masculini in 5th position was in that battle with Kevin Ryan and Miguel Leicester, but since he's able to sort of get his head down, he's actually found some pace and starting to pull up into a position, a possibility of grabbing 4th spot.
I'm just still fascinated by this top three that continues on as Van Buren just trying to take that tighter, slightly just more compacted line through the corners. They come up through out of Luffield and Woodcote once again. I have to say, you have to sense that possibly Van Buren and Wisniewski, they're not doing anything stupid here. They just set back thinking, okay, let's just run with Jeffrey here. Jeffrey's dictating the pace here, and now it's just up to Rudy and Nicodem to keep with him and to try and make sure he doesn't escape too far away, to keep him in touching distance, so that when they do go to launch an attack, they're right there. They come back into Maggots and Beckett's once again. This is on lap 13. We've got about roughly 20 minutes to go in this race now. We had about 12-ish or so at this point in time, so actually 18 minutes to go or so. Down towards Brooklands once again for the 13th time of asking. Van Buren thinking about it again, as is Wisniewski. And that's distraction technique, just putting yourself, if you're just darting out a little bit to try and also maybe tidy up the race in that part of the circuit to try and make a move, but also just to put yourself into the rival's mirrors thinking, I'm still here, just to try and distract him, so that when they come down to the braking zone, they hit the brakes just that little bit later, they lock up, they go straight on, they go very wide, and because of that, that's when they'll start to come under attack, and the guy attacking is going to try and pounce.
Van Buren is in a really tricky situation here. He is the meat in the sandwich in the middle. He has to think about attacking, of course, but if he attacks, you tend to open yourself up for an attack from behind as well. And with Wisniewski so close to him, if his attack fails, then he's almost certainly going to lose a position to Wisniewski, who's going to pounce. So Van Buren really isn't the man to watch to make a move for the moment. Wisniewski has nothing to lose. He's the man that potentially, if he goes late on the brakes down the inside and it doesn't work, he'll just end up dropping a little bit further back for a lap or two. But I think he could probably pull up. The pace from Rietveld isn't massively fast.
I think I have to agree on that Van Buren really is better. He's in a catch-22 situation. He has to try and keep up with and attack Rietveld, whilst at the same time keep one eye on his mirrors to try and make sure that he doesn't come under threat from Wisniewski behind. So he really is in the the difficult seat here out of the three cars in the mix as well. And of course, you have to also say that Honznik as well is holding station well in 4th, ahead of Mascubi and Kevin Ryan. And also, you have to be key. These three drivers here, if anything happens between the top three, they will take full advantage of that. As again, I can see now, Van Buren again just trying to put Rietveld under pressure once again. But so far, Jeff was just sat there possibly thinking, no, not going to happen. I'm just going to sit here and run my own pace. If you want to try and make an attack, that's down to your problem. I'm just going to sit here and absorb all this pressure, all this attack here. Wisniewski again once more puts himself into Van Buren's mirrors, thinking about a move, trying to distract the Dutchman in front to try and force him into a mistake. But so far, nothing doing from Van Buren, holding steady in 2nd place, holding firm and not moving an inch.
And the rules have changed this week. This is a completely different contest than the last 3 weeks, because it doesn't matter if you're 5th, 4th, 3rd or even 2nd position. There is only one prize really that everybody wants, and that is the win. There are prizes, in fact, for each week. We have prizes from our sponsors, Logitech for instance, and there are prizes for them, but really they just want that ability to go to McLaren Technology Centre in Woking, England, and sit down and have a week-long's worth of interviews to try and become the McLaren simulator driver and join that illustrious group of drivers who are already doing it. They've already got 4, but they need more and more and more so they can run that simulator as much as possible.
This is not so much a race, it's more like a very extreme high-speed job interview, or part of a job interview, I have to say, as they come through. And Miguel Morales is showing his DF, and again, he's another one that's cooked his engine as well. So he's obviously gone a bit too quick into Cops Corner or under brakes in one of the corners, and because of that, that's cost him dearly. So that's our 5th retirement from this race. 3 cars with engine problems, 2 with suspension damage after, we think, incidents earlier on the field. So how many more cars are we going to lose? Again, Rietveld feels he has to go defensive to sweep to the inside line to defend from an attack from Van Buren. For himself, he's taken the apex rather nicely. Top 3 holding together at this point in time. They head down towards Maggots and Beckett's again. It's still Rietveld in the orange car ahead of Van Buren in the red and white car, the Rob Racing livery machine, getting very close to the underneath the rear wing of Rietveld, and then it's the black, gold and white car behind with Nikodem Wisniewski, the Polish driver, in third place. And that second group behind, actually, Jaroslav Honzik, we should focus on this for a second, as we see the top three, as we get the Kubi move up the inside. This is for the lead of the race. Up the inside goes Van Buren. There's contact between the pair of them, and Van Buren's done it. And he's almost under attack from Wisniewski, trying to go around the outside again, but Rietveld will hold on to second place, and with a gutsy pass up the inside of Brooklands, that could be a crucial move. Rudy Van Buren hits the front at Silverstone National. That possibly, if he stays there, could be the move that wins in the final.
That was an absolutely beautiful move. There was no lock-up, there was no squirrely. He was down the inside, and then he let the car run through the corner and just forced Rietveld off the line, so he couldn't hit the inside line at Luffield, and it was just enough to claim an advantage. Van Buren ahead of Rietveld. Wisniewski tried to take advantage of it, could not, but it was a bit of a surprise. We were about to flick off and look at a different battle, and all of a sudden it happened. So it's very, very difficult to turn your eyes away from these front three, and again, it's all that matters. What's interesting though is with that move and with that slow lap, we've now almost got an extra 4 cars in this train.
We have. That's led by Jaroslav Honzik with Masculi, Ryan and Balesta also come into play as well. But last time they came across the line, they were separated by less than 4 seconds, 3.8 to be exact. But the top three are still close together by just under 6/10. So as they head out of Luffield now, this is the chance for Van Buren to set the pace now. Rather than sit behind Rietveld and get frustrated and lose time and lose grip in front of him, he can now hit the front and set his own pace. And the question's got to be, was he running at practically exactly the same pace as Rietveld, or has he got enough pace now in that red and white Rob Racing car to possibly try and pull away? And the answer is right now, not quite, because Rietveld is staying with him, as is Wisniewski, and I have to wonder whether Rietveld now, he's possibly in the plum seat as they head out of the right hand of Beckett's onto the Wellington straight towards Brooklands. So far, Van Buren holding firm, but now the question has to be, now that it's Rietveld who's the hunter rather than the hunted, what can he do now?
Well, also, Rietveld is in the slipstream, and here comes Wisniewski down the inside of Rietveld. He forces him wide, and that is a lovely move, exactly the same as what Rudy Van Buren did 2 laps ago. Rietveld tries to get back, goes 4 wheels over the curb at Luffield to try and get some kind of a nose down the inside, but he couldn't do it. And now from the lead of the race 3 laps ago, Rietveld's down to 3rd position. It's a Polish driver in the middle of a Dutch sandwich.
So back towards Copse again. This is on lap 20. We've got about 12 more minutes to go to decide who wins this final. And so far, I have to say, now Van Buren's got that clean air, he's absolutely loving it, because now he's not stuck in the middle of both Wisniewski and Rietveld. He's trying to make the most of it and trying to pull away. But I have to wonder now, what has Wisniewski got up his sleeve here? Because Wisniewski, effectively, these two were in this order in the first round when they qualified. It was Van Buren who won the race in round 1. Then it was Wisniewski in 2nd place. And they were pretty much this close for the entire race, or so to speak. There was maybe a slightly larger gap by the end of the race, but Wisniewski now has got the chance to get redemption. He missed out on the victory in round 1. Now he can try and chase after Van Buren in the final. This could be possibly a very electric battle, provided that Nikodem can get close enough to make a move up the inside.
And remember, the first week we had nearly 1,700 unique entrants into that first qualifying stage, and obviously space for just 20 drivers by the end. So they were the quality around the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit, and they were our top 2 of week 1. Then they were kind of eliminated out of the proceedings, and they had to wait until now to prove themselves again and allow someone like Jeffrey Rietveld to come through. And it was great to see him. It is great to see him as the week 2 winner involved in this leading battle.
I have to say, just heard of my ace and the race director that Kevin Ryan sounds like he tried to make a move on Eros Masculi, made it stick, but it was deemed it wasn't a legal move, shall we say, and had to give the place back. So it's this battle now. We're going to watch for P5 now. So Eros Masculi holding off Kevin Ryan so far. He's managed to give that position back. The Irishman, the SRC car, a little too deep.
Very
deep. Middle, very deep, in fact, through the middle of Brooklands. And now puts him under attack from the Spanish GT Academy winner of a couple of years ago, Miguel Balesta, who's been the sort of the man that you've been championing for the whole sort of campaign so far. He's up there in P7, doing himself proud so far. But the leading trio still covered by just under 9/10 of a second now, and it's starting to gap each other a little bit more now. There's about a 4/10 of a second gap between each car. So Van Buren has a 4/10 second gap to Wisniewski, then a further 4/10 ahead of Rietveld. Wisniewski closes back under braking through the complex of Maggots and Beckett's and onto the Wellington straight again. But you have to say, this is looking pretty intriguing now. Now Van Buren's in front, in the lead now, Ben. He looks a lot more comfortable in this race than he was stuck in the middle of both Van Buren, of Rietveld and this Wisniewski before.
Now, I want to talk about track limits as Kevin Ryan goes down the inside of Masculini, and that this time might happen. It might stick. He hasn't forced Masculini quite far enough, and Masculini still has the overlap, still has the inside line for Luffield, and that's the kind of classic Silverstone racing that you see side by side for 2 corners. It hasn't changed at all, and Ryan is still hassling him. Down the inside, you have to force the other driver just a little bit wide through Brooklands so you can claim Luffield's apex. If you don't, then that's exactly what happens. No change. It's the battle of 5th position. And Kevin Ryan, as the week 3 winner, would much rather be a bit further up the road battling for the lead of this race, but didn't make it into the top 5. Oh, and that's a brave move. Thrings it down the inside into Maggots and Beckett's, which really is not a place you should overtake. A little bit of banging wheels, forces Masculini wide, and this time he's made it stick, but can the Italian fight back, going down into Brooklands, decides against it, and Ballesta's having a great view of it just behind.
I have to say, this lead battle's not over, because what's intriguing here is Rietveld's dropped back ever so slightly, and now it's battle lines drawn between Van Buren and Wisniewski for the lead of the race. Of course, this is crucial, of course. One pass here for Wisniewski and Van Buren could get them that crucial interview spot at the finals in November at the McLaren Technology Centre. That's what they're playing for here, with some 9 or 8 minutes to go in this race. This is pretty crucial. This could be possibly the biggest 8 or 9 minutes of their sim racing careers so far. Van Buren must have his heart and his mouth trying to hold on. Wisniewski is the one that's hunting him down into Maggots and Beckett. This is a really classic battle between these two. Thankfully, it's the race we hope for. Lots of action, lots of overtaking, and a very close run thing at the front. Wisniewski's in the slipstream now, trying to chase after Van Buren, and they're starting to drop Rietveld ever so slightly. That initial pace that Rietveld had, he's starting to fade away now and go back across the line. Rietveld was almost a second back. In fact, he is a second back from the leader now, as the top 2 try to pull away.
And what's crucial is that allows Wisniewski to not have to worry about if he has a problem losing a position, because there is now a gap that if he does run a little bit wide, he can still hold on to that second, draw back up to the back of our leader and have another go. Really absolutely fascinating to see. I want to just throw in a thing I absolutely hate: track limits. It's governed by the game, so the game sees if you take 4 wheels off the circuit, and it's taking a tally. 3 cuts and you get a penalty, and Rietveld, who's now in 3rd, has already got a cut.
So you might not be able to see it on the stream, but I'm looking at the rear wing now, and staring back at Nikitin and Wisniewski, looking back now as they charge over the bumps underneath the wellings of the bridge down towards Brooklands again. Just watch and see how a little bit later on the brakes and that tighter run. And that's a mistake there for Van Buren up the inside, possibly a slightly wider run into Brooklands. I thought there was a mistake going a little bit too deep, but that was the unique line that Van Buren was taking. But that really has given Wisniewski the wake-up call here. He could smell blood as they come out of Woodcote onto the pit straight once again. We are now on. We've now got just over 8.5 minutes to go in this race. We've got 8.5 minutes to decide who wins the final here. Up into Copse Corner. Better run through the right-hander from Van Buren. Wisniewski catches back up on the exit, so initial turning, Van Buren is better, but on the exit, Wisniewski carried a lot more speed up towards Maggots and Beckett. He's really close to back up under braking. Wisniewski looks as though Ben's on a man on a mission.
I've got to say, massive pat on the back to all the technicians who've been working on the rFactor 2 platform over the last couple of weeks, tweaking this 650S to make it not only a realistic car, but also a car that provides great racing. And over the last week, they've got rid of the dirty air effect off the back of the rear wing and allowed these cars to run so much closer. And that's what we're seeing today, an amazingly entertaining encounter. The slipstream effect is working, the dirty air is not, and these cars therefore are locked together like a Formula Ford race would be.
So certainly as close and exciting as Formula Ford race, so I can guarantee that, as they come back into Copse Corner again. You have to say the focus is now going to be between, it's between Van Buren and Wisniewski. I don't want to put the commentator's curse on it, but so far Rietveld's initial pace really has dropped off. He was back by 1.3 seconds to leader Van Buren. Looking quickly down the back rest of the field, we've got Honzik in no man's land in 4th position. This ongoing scrap going on between Ryan and Ballesta for 5th and 6th. Then we've got this train of 5 cars battling over 7th place. Good sort of battle here for bragging rights here between Michi Hoyer, David Mrocek, and then we have Martin Stefanka, Peter Burlak up from 17th on the grid. That's pretty good from him. And Yuri Kasdorf in 11th place. Then we also have in there in 12th place Davide Chiappini. He was towards the back of the field. Paolo Moyet, then Zbigniew Ciara, who is, I think, possibly a lap down, in the mix. So he's not too far away. And that 5-car train having a good scrap. Mickey Hoare at the front of it. I think he was one of a couple of drivers, including Rudy Van Buren. I think they were actually interviewed live on Sky News earlier on. So that's how big this competition's been, the fact that they've actually been interviewed by Sky News. We've got some people from Sky actually News here this weekend as well. And it's great to have them, of course, as well as some other people from the media as well. Hopefully they're enjoying this race now with 6.5 minutes to go. And now that it's getting ever closer to decide who is going to be able to win it, as I think Wisniewski tried a possible move into Magnus and Beckett's, but he took a slightly deeper run, a little bit deeper on the brakes to get into the complex, but he looks like he lost a little bit of time. But back up towards Brooklands, it's battle lines drawn again between the top two.
Very, very different lines taking through all of the corners between our top two drivers. Van Buren doesn't seem to be driving too defensively. He's just placing the car in a different place, and Wisniewski is always on a different part of the circuit, but it's not really enough to make a pass. And that's why we're seeing different lines, and it's exactly like we saw with our virtual overlay from the qualifying 20. Different lines, but at the end of the day, it's still the same pace and the same lap. And they're staying about the same pace throughout this race. About a 53-second lap seems to be the average pace. Van Buren was just below that the last time through, and Wisniewski was just behind that, a 53.1 his last lap, although now you look at it, there's still 1 car length between them, so it's really hard to see how they could make up any kind of a ground. And interesting that Jeffrey Reitveld has dropped off now. His last lap was a 53.5, so he just does not have the pace. And whilst a couple of laps ago we saw a train of 7 cars, now it's very much 2 as Wisniewski gets super, super close to the rear end of Rudy Van Buren.
If we can, let's go on board with the bonnet camera of Nikodem Wisniewski to see exactly how close he is, closing the back of Rudy Van Buren. In fact, he's even got the name emblazoned underneath his rear wing to guarantee that's what his name is, if he almost forgotten. Down through Woodcote, down the pit straight once again. They're now on to start. Lap 30 now here at the Silverstone National Circuit. Slightly tighter run through the corner, slightly wider exit there from Van Buren, carrying a little bit more speed through the apex of the corner. Looking at the last lap times, in fact, Van Buren, his last lap time, by looks of things, he was only 1,000th of a second quicker. That's how close it is between these two guys at the front. They are lapping, this punch and counter punch, lapping almost identical, about to the 1,000th of a second. That's how close these guys are. They are racing for this crucial prize with 4.5 minutes to go. Wisniewski's trying to dummy down towards Brooklands again, takes the tighter run into the corner, forcing Van Buren to try and go deep. Doesn't work. Has a second bite of the cherry, bounces over the curb on the apex at Brooklands, back into left field, hugs the apex, takes the double apex on the brakes again. So Wisniewski trying to put all the pressure on, but so far Van Buren doing a super job just to absorb all of it and absorb it well.
As you say, very, very different lines, but he does look a little bit ruffled. You certainly don't want to be taking the curb on the inside of Brooklands. It just unsettles the car too much, and you can't get that little squirt of energy that you need between Brooklands and Luffield to get a decent lap time. You just have to wait for the car to kind of settle itself, and it shows on the last lap times, because they're about 4/10 slower than the time before that. They're in the 53s again. Oh, and a very, very good run from Wisniewski this time. I think Van Buren knew that he made a mistake through Beckett, and now has to sit on the very, very inside as they go to Brooklands. Huge defensive move from Van Buren. Wisniewski tries the cutback, but it's so hard to do at Brooklands now. And Van Buren sits to the inside of Luffield, nowhere through. Wisniewski is faster, that's definitely clear now. Certainly on this last lap he didn't make the error, but just could not find a way through. And Van Buren is now driving in his mirrors. Look at the last lap times through as they break the beam, and the lap time of Rudy Van Buren was a 53.2. Actually, Wisniewski was a 53.3 because he had to back out of it. The fastest man on circuit was Reitveld, who took a couple of tenths out of these front two.
He did. He took almost 3.5 tenths out of them, so that's really crucial in that sense. They come back to the brakes again. Wisniewski so good under brakes for these corners. There's a little wider run on the exit of the corner from Van Buren. That may possibly compromise him. Although I say that, but he looks as though he got a pretty good exit out of the corner. Managed to get on the throttle pretty quickly, but he's in the slipstream once again. Which side is he going to go? He darts to the left-hand side. Dummy to try and go to the outside. That's pretty impressive if he can pull it off. As Van Buren just parks it straight off the apex. Hits the brakes about 3 times in the apex. Hits it once again towards Luffield. We've now got 2.5 minutes to go, and this is not decided by any means. Van Buren and Wisniewski are that close together. Rietveld's not too far away either. He's got a prime seat here to take advantage. If either of them start to mess up, has to come back onto the pit straight again. Wisniewski goes to the inside once again to try and make a move up towards Copse Corner. It's anyone's guess. The big slide, the big moment there from Van Buren, but he holds it well and somehow maintains his advantage.
Absolutely fantastic racing. We're coming up to our 30-minute curfew. Only a few more chances now for Wisniewski to pounce. But what's interesting over the last couple of laps is that Rietveld has found more pace and he's started to draw onto the back of these two. We have a three-way battle now as we come to the last couple of laps as to who could claim the victory and go into that final in November, the interview stage of the world's fastest gamer, as the winner of the rFactor 2 platform. Of course, some of these guys that don't win can transfer and go and do the iRacing platform in a couple of weeks' time and have another shot at it. Certainly someone like David Williams, I think we'll see doing that. He didn't even get through this week after 2 weeks of trying.
I think we've got time for, 2 more laps to go, then 2 more tours of a national circuit to decide who gets that qualifying spot to head to the McLaren Technology Centre. It all plays for here. The little wide from Wisniewski on the exit of the corner over the curbs, but I think so far he's just trying to hold on as much as he can. Back into Maggots and Beckett's, trying to close in. If he's been sizing up an attack over the last few laps, he's got to try and pull the pin now, because he can't sit there forever and try and work it through as they come back up towards Brooklands again. This is for the penultimate time. Wisniewski has to make a move sooner rather than later. He's back under brakes again as they come back in towards Brooklands. Rietveld is there, and as they come back up the apex, Van Buren's got it covered. We're coming up towards the last lap of the race. We're going to crown a finalist here, Ben, and so far, as they come on to the last lap of the race with 46 seconds to go, so far we can't call this.
Last lap then. 3 cars for victory, each in each other's slipstream. Each has had a go at leading this race. Wisniewski only a very slight sniff. And it's been Rudy Van Buren in the second half of the race who's been controlling the pace. The slipstream has played a huge effect. These drivers have been absolutely pitch perfect throughout the race. And now just one more opportunity, one more braking zone. Wisniewski is super clean through Beckett's, allows the car to run onto the tail of Rudy Van Buren. Van Buren has to work out if he defends, if he attacks, doesn't know where to put the car. He does very defensive. Wisniewski tries to go around the outside. There isn't a way through. Can he try the cutback? It's not much point because Luffield goes right, and that is it. I don't think there's any other opportunity. Wisniewski is super close, but now it's just an accelerating drag race to the line, and Van Buren has held on. He might not have been the fastest throughout the whole of the race, but he's driven it absolutely brilliantly. And Rudy Van Buren takes victory ahead of Nikodem Wisniewski and Jeffrey Rietveld. What a race!
So that's it then. After 2,000 races, that's it. We have our champion. Rietveld gets third, Wisniewski second, but you're looking at him there. Rudy Van Buren from the Netherlands is the winner of the rFactor 2 qualifiers. He wins the final, and he is the lucky man that will go to the McLaren Technology Centre in November to join the fellow finalists. Congratulations to him. What a fantastic race it was, and a fantastic way for him to close it off. Of course, he won his first qualifying heat, and that was a crucial pass midway through that won it for him, Ben.
Well, there we go. Absolutely breathtaking to the very end. What a race! And you heard the applause, the spontaneous applause behind us from our crowd that are assembled around the commentary. I've never had so many spectators for the commentary. Absolutely wonderful to see. What a race! Absolutely enthralling. And there is your top 3. From the Netherlands, Jeffrey Rietveld, who led early on, but wasn't quite able to hold the pace in the middle of the race, and then his attack was left wanting at the end. Nikodem Wisniewski, I think he had the pace to lead and win this in second position from Poland. And Rudy Van Buren, who took victory in the opening week from the Netherlands, takes victory for the rFactor 2. He is the representative that will go to McLaren in November and represent rFactor 2 as their champion. And we're going to have a quick word with him in a few moments' time via TeamSpeak and find out how excited he is. Now, of course, when you win a real race, or when you win a race in front of a crowd, you have people applauding and cheering. And I wonder whether he had anyone in his bedroom or in his office watching and being able to give him a pat on the back.
I think he firmly told every single person in his office to get out, because he wants to have so much focus to try and win this. But I'm sure internally he'll be absolutely just fist pumping for joy and celebrating, because he'll know what that means. He knows that he gets to join a very select few people to go to the McLaren Technology Centre and go for what effectively is probably the biggest prize in sim racing history, to be able to be actually a past the McLaren F1 team. He's one step closer to that, and he'll be absolutely over the moon, I'm sure of it.
Absolutely, and I mean, I was nervous. I was really nervous. I had no idea who was going to win that. So how he must have been feeling on his own, just focused and with so much attention all the way through the race from in front and behind.
Yeah, and even said it on commentary. The move he pulled on Jeffrey Rietveld, that was literally the move that won him the contest, that won him the final. Halfway through, he thought, right, There's a move up the inside. For him, he felt it was now or never. Took his chance, stuck it up the inside, got past Rietveld and held him off, and effectively did a sterling job to defend from Wisniewski. I was on tender hooks the last lap, waiting for that final pass to happen, because I was waiting for Wisniewski to try and send one up the inside, but he just felt so compelled to take the outside line, to try and send it around the outside to get the inside for Lutfield. But ultimately, Van Buren stuck it, parked it on the apex, and held the position, and he's our winner.
Well, absolutely wonderful to be able to connect so quickly and find out the feelings of Rudy Van Buren. You are the winner of the world's fastest gamer competition for the rFactor platform. Congratulations. How is it? How is it in Holland? Rudy, are you there?
Yes, definitely.
Ah, great. How is it? How are you feeling?
Oh, this was literally the most intense thing I've ever done.
Let's talk about the early part of the race. Sitting behind your countryman, you looked like you had the pace, but you really had to choose your moments well.
Yeah, that was really difficult, because I had obviously Nico then behind me, pushing as well, and you could see that he had the pace as well. So from my side, it was a bit like either you attack or get attacked. You're like in the middle of something, and I could luckily see that Nico then wasn't too overdriving it to like get by me. He was just waiting as well, and then Jeffrey let the door open for one shot, and I needed to take it. That was the only shot I was going to get probably. So I needed to go for it, and from there on, it were 15 very, very long laps.
How on the edge was that move? How close to the limit of adhesion was it?
Yeah, well, Robin's racing, they say.
Well, you had to, really, because if he had the inside line to Lutfield, then you'd have not made the move stick.
Yeah, definitely. And I already, with this, I had a better start, and T1, we just played it safe, it was all good. And then T2, he braked really late, and I needed to put everything in it to not hit his side at that point. So I was like, well, 1-0 for you. And then the next one, like, I can name any driver on the grid who would have dove into that same gap. So I needed to, and that paid off in the end.
I mean, Rudy, you've won championships, you've won countless sim races in various different leagues. Where does this surely must stack up as possibly the biggest sim racing win of your career, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, definitely. This goes to the top without a doubt. This was the most intense sim racing thing I've ever done. And people say if you're in a race like this, you start thinking about certain stuff you should never think about. Well, it happens, but luckily I could keep it on track, and we could play it fair to the end and bring a car home. Very, very happy.
So what were you thinking about then? What came into your mind halfway through?
The most random things pop up. For example, 2 months ago I had one of my 3 screens going deaf. So then you're driving a race, like, oh, do I smell something electric burning? Those kind of things that just put you off. But then in the end, at that point, there's nothing you can change about it. So it's just head first, go on, and make it or break it.
I'm going to fast forward a couple of months now. You're going to be heading to Woking to the McLaren Technology Centre and sitting in front of a panel of very important people and judges, trying to basically talk yourself into an incredible job. Just put into words what the feeling is now and the excitement towards that kind of amazing prize.
It's difficult to put in words. Sim racing is actually one of these things that if you talk about it on your regular job, people think, oh, you're just playing a damn game. Then a competition like this comes up, you start to explain what it is and how much fuels it takes and everything. And now, for example, when I get tomorrow to work, I can tell something completely else, like, hey, I might believe in you. That must be a story of the week.
And what do you do at the moment? When are you going to jack your job in from becoming McLaren's simulator driver if that happens?
Currently, I'm just working in the media and sales. I'm doing two sides of it, but I hope to pull over some judges at the end of the year and show I'm capable for something else.
Rudy, it's been a pleasure to see you racing today. Absolutely professional stuff, and to hear the enthusiasm for this competition. Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you in November.
Well done.
Definitely. Thank you guys for everything.
Absolutely awesome. You can hear it in his voice. He was a very eloquent chap when he won his first race, and absolutely wonderful and over the moon.
Yeah, and as you heard him say, effectively that's the biggest sim race he's ever won, and no wonder, because effectively with what's at stake, I can't blame him. So the fact that he's that psyched up about it, I think I would be if I was in that situation, but effectively I think we all would. But I think he realises the gravity of what he's just achieved and what he could have potentially achieved in a couple of months if he impressed the judges enough.
Well, now comes a time where we dissect the race, and because we've got so many guests here, we're going to bring everybody onto the sofa. So come over, Michael and Dev and Miguel. We've got Miguel here also, who didn't have a huge amount of work to do actually in race control today. It wasn't too bad. Firstly, McLaren's perspective. How impressed were you at that race?
It was very impressive. I think Van Buren did very well considering the pressure he was under. I actually thought he went a bit early going halfway through the race, going for the lead. I thought he was going to sit there and hold out. So, he hit the front and then he was under a lot of pressure for the next 16 minutes. So I think he did very, very well.
And as somebody who potentially could be your employee, what are you kind of looking at during the race to see maybe consistency or car placement? I mean, surely if he started doing a touring car bumper car race, you wouldn't have been very impressed.
Yeah, I mean, obviously today was a racing competition, but yeah, from a simulator point of view, cutting out any mistakes, which I really didn't see any. I think there was maybe one where he got a little bit loose coming around a couple of corners, but by and large he was very consistent. He did very well with the pressure, which it's a pressurized environment what we work in. So yeah, a lot of good traits that he demonstrated today.
And also, I suppose, listening to how he speaks, very, very important, because feedback is crucial.
Yes, yeah, I mean, good technical feedback is what we're looking for. It's why we get the drivers involved. It's why we call it driver in the loop when it comes to simulation. So yeah, if you can provide that feedback, it's a good starting point and something we'll hopefully develop, if he's the eventual winner.
Fantastic. From a race direction perspective, Miguel, I thought it was going to be crazier than that, honestly.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be like last race, that everybody was going mentally to the first corner. There was a few contacts, but he was much more composed. Obviously, it didn't result on the crash. It result on some cars going a bit wider, but overall, I think it was much better. It was a nice, exciting race as well.
Wasn't it? Let's go and have a look then at the start of the race, as you mentioned it. I was absolutely sure we would see a couple of cars either running super, super wide or turning around. But Deb, were you impressed to see everyone get out the first corner in one piece?
No, very impressed actually. I thought, considering what's at stake, some people might go overboard and overly push. But I think Van Buren did a proper job. Very good job. Like Michael said, I thought he went a little bit early, but he held the pressure very, very well, and I think he drove very, very good.
So here is the start then, side by side at the front, side by side for third as well, and there were a few cars going a bit wide, but it's kind of allowed when you're trying to go four wide. Amazing to see these guys side by side for two corners. And then through the second major braking point, again, they all were very clean, and it was just rubbing, Miguel, wasn't it? It wasn't aggressive over contact. It was just a little bit rubbing here and there.
Yeah, it was just some small rubbing. Even when they touch, at least on the first two corners, was not a big movements of the car. So it's just like a panel, so nothing would be damaged. So it was quite clean for the amount of cars and for the pace these guys have, and for what it is at stake. All of them wants to go for the win. None of them wants to go for fifth place. So they always on the first corner is the biggest chance. If you are in fifth, you have the biggest chance to go to second, or even maybe to first, but obviously there's a lot at stake.
So let's move then on to Van Buren and Rietveld. Obviously, Jeffrey was leading, but he just didn't really look like he had the pace.
Of course, he was leading, so he got to control the pace in terms of what was going on. We can see it on the screens around us here. And you just saw that Van Buren looked a little bit racy, and he was just simply picking his moment. But at this point in time, again, he puts himself to the outside to try and get a good move, to try and get the switch back and to get the line into Lufford on the right-hand side. But again, this is exactly what Van Buren was doing later on in the race, parking the car on the apex and just holding that defensive line as best he could. And eventually, Van Buren was in a position where he pushed and Rietveld absorbed all of this pressure until eventually Rietveld cracked, and there was a little opportunity on the inside, and like Rudy said, the opportunity was there. He knew it was the key pass, he had to take it, he did, and he went through.
It was never going to be around the outside of Brooklands. That was never going to work. Looking at the closing speeds there of those front two as they came off Beckett's, is that kind of thing you would expect on a Silverstone National circuit in a GT car, that kind of slipstream effect?
Yeah, of course, especially a race around Silverstone National where it was always going to be so close and so tight. that was definitely to be expected.
Yeah, and it was wonderful to have the physics slightly tweaked to allow us to have such a slipstreamer. Let's move on then to a bit further back. There was some fantastic groups of racing, and Kevin Ryan, for instance, early doors, desperately trying to make his way up through the pack, and him and Ballester had a couple of door-knocking moments.
Yeah, of course, Kevin Ryan, of course, who won the third round, and Ballester being your favourite driver practically for the whole of the competition. But these two really put on quite a show for the first three opening laps. A little bit wide there from Ballester, you can see here. I'm not sure. I think we're watching from. I think this possibly is
wide from Masculini.
Yeah, Masculini.
Trying to go around the outside here, and doesn't manage to make it work that time. But really, really close racing, fair racing, Miguel.
Yeah, I think it's quite fair. It's quite risky to go on the inside of maggots, because you're going to go on the outside into the straight. But if you're sure you can go half the car on the braking, it's worth a try. But it didn't work out very well for him.
And again, they continue to battle. Let's have a look at Ballester and Ryan's contact, because it wasn't just that. It was then it continued throughout the race, and we had the Maggots and Beckett's pass, which was very, very impressive. But some of it didn't quite work. This is the contact between the two of them, and I think we don't have it. Okay, we don't have it. We'll move on then. The most important thing, the overtake between Van Buren and Rietveld. Let's have a look at that, because I really want to dissect and see just how it was done. Van Buren and Rietveld's pass for the lead. Obviously, Rietveld. Did you feel like he didn't have the pace?
Towards the end, I think Rietveld struggled. I think maybe he pushed on a bit too much in the beginning, and he wasn't able to withstand the pressure of Van Buren.
So this is the move. This is the overtake for the win. God, it was quite a late move, wasn't it?
That was very late, but at Silverstone National, I think it's to be expected, because you're not going to get very many opportunities to overtake. And I think he pushed and piled on the pressure, and he got it done.
But was that pressure? I mean, was that Rietveld under pressure and failing under pressure, or was that simply him not really expecting that move to be done? Because I don't think I would expect someone to come on that late. Miguel?
For me. I think it was quite fair the move. He put clearly the car halfway, and then a bit of contact, but I think it's legal. What I think, it was probably, it might be even setup. Towards the end of the race, he was struggling a bit of setup, and then allowed the other two cars behind him to pass. But I think he had the pace. So obviously, he had the pace in qualifying. He did on Superpole. He did the fastest lap time.
Yeah.
But it might be the case of setup.
But then we saw Rietveld not just drop to second, but quite quickly he was down into third position, and a really spectacular move from Wisniewski to make that one happen. Here it is. Michael, impressed with this one?
Yeah, it was a good move. I mean, obviously, Rietveld, having lost one place, he's obviously, don't want to feel like the race is going away from him. So he's going to be defensive. But it was fair. It was a little bit of contact, but nothing too dramatic. And with what's on the line, it could have easily ended very badly for both of them. So,
and it was clear that he was later on the break. So Rietveld was leaving a little bit of a margin there. Yeah,
it did look as though on that move, when you look at it from that onboard shot, that Rietveld was pretty much leaving the door wide open for Verstappen to head up the inside. So effectively, Nicodem said, well, if you're going to leave it that wide open, I'm not going to go through it. So he made through. And again, it was the same as Van Buren's move. A little bit of door-to-door contact. I'm sure you agree, Miguel, it was fair as anything.
Yeah, he still managed to turn the car to the apex. It was not kind of a launch that he was forced wide. He still climbed the curve on the inside of Brooklyn. So it seemed, and the contact was just rubbing.
Just rubbing, exactly. Rubbing's racing. Could it have been that having lost the lead and therefore kind of knowing Van Buren well, knowing that it would be very, very difficult to snatch it back, he kind of lost a little bit of focus and maybe got frustrated? Because it really did look like, to me, that they left that door open, wide open. He was braking early and kind of lost the spirit.
Yeah, of course, I think that's normal in a situation like that. You lose your head a little bit and lose the confidence, and maybe he wasn't expecting that move to be done, but I think that's quite important.
I think what I loved about this whole race was it wasn't just the lead battle. Great to have a lead battle. It's always fantastic to have any battle, but when it's for the lead, it's the best. But there was also others further back as well. So here's Kevin Ryan on Masculini eventually, and obviously they were battling with Ballester. Ballester by that point was a bit further back, but this was a battle for 5th position, which in any other week would have been a really intense battle to qualify. But a nice move this one, Scott.
Yeah, it was. It was nice and clean, and if there was any contact, it was the lightest of touches. Again, it was a clean, fair move, and Ryan actually did well enough to actually hold that momentum around the outside, depending even though it was pretty tough. But again, he managed to hold a pretty good bit of traction, or he did until that happened.
Yeah, no, exactly. And the interesting thing for me is, unlike the other moves where there was a bit of rubbing enough to knock that guy off line, because there wasn't there, the nose was just about inside to Luffield, and that's the difficulty of the Silverstone National Circuit. Yeah,
it's a tight circuit. There's not many overtaking opportunities. There's obviously a lot on the line. So if you get the sniff of something, you've got to take it. But you really don't want to mess up both your race and someone else's race. So there's a lot of pressure.
Yeah. And finally, the finish, the last lap. We went on to that last lap having no idea who was going to win. This was the final tour then, and we can kind of relive it and see, was there any opportunities at all? I think it might have. Oh, it's in super slow-mo. Hang on, that was the end of the race. That was the checkered flag. That was like an IndyCar, Indy 500 styly finish. There's nothing between the three of them. That's absolutely insane.
Absolutely.
Wow, absolutely.
That's how competitive it was, how close and competitive it was. The fact that we had, 2,000 odd drivers come through, and it came down to those three that close at the finish after 3 or 4 races. Unbelievable.
So, Michael, tell me, are you excited about the next step for these guys? Or what are they going to be faced with when they go to the McLaren Technology Centre, Rudy Van Buren?
Yeah, so obviously Rudy Van Buren and the other winners that have already been announced, are going to be facing a series of trials. It's not just going to be about their racing, it's going to be about fitness, it's going to be about feedback. It's going to be a real challenge. And hopefully, we'll find the right sort of world's fastest gamer off the back of it. So, best of luck to all of them.
Absolutely fantastic to have you with us, and Dev, thank you very much. I know you were racing on the circuit today and then came down to hang out with us this evening, so great to have you all. Miguel, we'll thank you again later, and Scott, thank you. But Rudy Van Buren represents the rFactor 2 platform, and he is progressing into the interview stage as the winner of rFactor 2. But there are different platforms, as I've been saying. iRacing happens in September, and we've had the Gear Club platform, which is a mobile game going on throughout the summer. We've established our winner, and his name is Hendrik. We're just going to get that reset and requeued. It's a lovely story, actually, because he's playing on Gear Club, which is a little mobile device. And let's learn a little bit about Hendrik.
I don't own a PlayStation, Xbox, or computer. Currently, I'm specializing in the field of radiology, so finding the time to actually play those games can be difficult.
He has to think quick in his job as a surgeon. When things don't go as you think they will, and you have to react very quick.
The moves, the judgments you take, they have consequences. You need to be focused all the time. I downloaded Gear Club around 5 days before the qualification started. Finding time to play Gear Club was very challenging for me. Around maybe 8 o'clock in the evening, I could play for maybe 2-3 hours. Then it all came together. I was able to not only win, but also to shatter the competition, winning by almost 5 seconds. I am a bit different from some of the other finalists, but I truly believe I have the ability. They will see that I am fast.
What a wonderful story. Amazing to see people from around the globe joining in with this competition, and whatever platform they have, whether it be a full simulator rig or whether it be just an iPad, can get involved and perhaps change your life. It sounds like he's changed his life already with being a doctor. I'm joined by James Bauer from McLaren and Darren Cox, one of the founders of this event. Darren, impressed with tonight?
Fantastic. I mean, obviously the racing was amazing, but also what's going on behind the scenes. I think you guys did a brilliant job, so thank you for that. Full of enthusiasm. You know, the numbers of people watching, the numbers of people competing has just been fantastic. So yeah, thanks to everyone that's been involved, both here and watching back at home.
James, from a McLaren perspective, impressed?
Yeah, absolutely. The quality of the content's been absolutely incredible. Set a benchmark really on brand for us at McLaren, but also set a new benchmark, we think, in esports, and really kind of speaks to our ambition for the competition.
McLaren was traditionally a very traditional outfit, and over the last year or so with Zach's influence, I see more and more change in the team. Why did McLaren decide to be involved in this project?
So we've been looking at esports for a number of years, and I think what's really great about the McLaren brand is that we're already embedded in the biggest racing sims. So we wanted to take the brand into esports, but actually provide something that can bring together all the different fans of all the different racing sims. And I think World's Fastest Gamer, really does that. And it's not a short-term project. We think esports racing will become a key pillar of our motorsports portfolio.
And you have a real serious ambition for the eventual winner to work him hard, right?
Yeah, absolutely. As you heard from Michael earlier on, we're going to have really sort of grueling finalist week in November, and then the winner will ultimately be pushed to provide value for the team.
Yeah, absolutely. And Darren, to bring all these different platforms, whether it be on an iPad or in a £30,000 simulator, it's quite a challenge.
Yes, it is, but that was the whole concept of this project. Obviously, previously it worked on projects where there was one game, and the brilliant thing about any gaming, but specifically racing gaming, is the Forza guys think they're better than the Gran Turismo guys, and as we're about to see, the iRacing guys think they're better than the rFactor guys, and I always saw this and just thought this rivalry will give us a nice platform. So hopefully when we come to November, there'll be the Forza forums will be, taking on the Gran Turismo guys, and there'll be plenty of banter during the week, and basically it's a champion of champions. And one of the reasons we've got Gear Club involved is you can have a £30,000 pound rig in your house, but that really narrows the talent pool down. And as we know, motorsport is very expensive to get involved in straight away. So to have something that's free to download and that you can qualify, this guy did 5 days, and then he was qualifying in the competition. But more importantly than that, of course we've heard some of the winners of the other competitions. We've got a Dutchman there going through, but McLaren really want to do is get to some of the developing countries, to get to South America, to get to Asia, and a lot of these guys just haven't got fast enough broadband connections or the kit to be able to compete. But now, and certainly for next year, we'll expand that mobile platform and make sure that we can get more and more people involved in this fantastic sport.
I think what's also crucial as well, I think you'll agree, is the fact that I think sim racing as a whole has probably paid its due as an esport in secret for almost 15-20 years, and now we're starting to discover it. But I think you'll find that effectively it's quite good. We get these great drivers coming out the woodwork saying we've been here for 5-10 years or so. Now they're getting the publicity thanks to the initiative of yourself and other sim race competitions to give them that limelight to go for something truly spectacular.
Well, I think it's not just the drivers, it's the people behind the scenes. It's yourself, and we know that Jack Nicholls, who's now a great F1 commentator, started in esports.
He did.
You've got the technical guys here that have been doing it as a passion project now. We might even pay them for being here over the last 4 weeks. So yes, the industry does need to professionalise, but there's some professional people already involved in it. And one of the things we want to do with World's Fastest Gamer is to set the benchmark, as James said. And just this qualifying event, I think, has raised the barrier in terms of how to do one of these sort of events.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have you got some stats and numbers to demonstrate? I know we had about 2,500 unique entrants into it, and some 400,000 laps, I think, turned to try and qualify into this.
Yeah, there's there's some huge amount of effort that's been put in by the drivers. We saw some numbers on the Gear Club. We've had over 500,000 people downloaded that game to enter. You know, we're going to add up, so watch this space, how many millions of miles we've had on the qualifying events. I mean, James will tell you, even while we're here in Berlin, there was another qualifying event that Logitech was holding at a big gaming conference. So, you know, these things are happening all the time. You mentioned the iRacing, the final qualifier, the iRacing qualifier is coming up. So this is, you know, been started, you know, early in the summer, and it's just got a big momentum around it. And this is just the start. You know, that week in November is going to be really intense, and you know, the culmination of it. So if you look at the amount of viewers, how much content we've got out there, and how people are engaging in it, it's massive. So yeah, everyone that's been involved in the project's been very happy, and you know, for next year we're already thinking about it. It's going to grow even bigger.
And with how big this is getting, of course, with McLaren being involved, and of course Nissan GT Academy, which you were quite a large part of as well, how prominent this is going to be? This is going to start to prompt other manufacturers to think, actually, this looks pretty good, we could possibly give this a go as well. Do you think this is going to sort of maybe a chain reaction now with the likes of the McLaren and Nissan have sort of set the benchmark for these kind of competitions?
Yeah, I think we've definitely seen that already. We've seen the announcement from Formula One, which we think is, you know, hugely positive. We think it's complementary. I think you know, we created this competition around a set of insights, and I think the one around kind of providing a focal point, bringing fans of different platforms together, as Darren said, and really leveraging the competitiveness between those different racing sims is kind of key for us, and we think that's really unique, and how we actually leverage the McLaren brand to really engage people. So yeah, next year is just about expanding the reach, making it more accessible, but I think it's been fantastic so far for really engaging the community, and you know, today was just a great example of that.
And what have you got planned on in November for these guys, for Rudy and Hendrik?
Absolutely.
How are you going to grill them?
So we're working very closely with McLaren Racing to set a number of gateways that the finalists will have to pass through that finalist week, and I think from the moment they're with us, absolutely everything they think or do is going to be captured as well. So it's going to be a really grueling week, but yeah, really exciting.
I think going back to the manufacturer's point, the proof of the pudding that McLaren jumped on this early of the Formula One teams and the premium brands is when the Formula One Championship was launched, the next line was, and McLaren had already done this with World's Fastest Gamer, you know, they're being seen as an innovator. And you mentioned Zach before, obviously launching the IndyCar initiative, etc. So yeah, the being first is always an advantage, but also you've got to be best, and that's what we're trying to do here. But also, you know, other manufacturers are getting involved, not to this depth. You know, we saw Ford spend a huge amount of money on what looked like a motor show stand at Gamescom, for example. So yes, people are coming into it, but I think, you know, McLaren has stolen a march, certainly amongst the Formula One team, certainly amongst the premium brands in the automotive industry, and you know, we're there to keep them ahead.
Well, thank you very much, guys. It's been an absolute pleasure for everybody in this team to be a part of, and absolutely wonderful. But it's not ended. It might have ended for the rFactor 2 qualifiers here at Silverstone, but there's plenty more opportunities. If you're a budding driver to qualify, as I said, iRacing starts on the 12th of September, and many other platforms all the way through until those November finals. And keep in touch on the McLaren Facebook page and YouTube channel for all the videos highlighting what's been going on with this absolutely groundbreaking, innovative and awesome project. I hope you've enjoyed everything that we've shown you over the last 4 weeks, and I look forward to showing you some more in a few months' time. Thanks very much for watching. Good night.